Hey guys, Gavin here again. This is chapter 8 of Those Three Words. It's a fan fiction about Son Tales, Sonic X Tails. Cool little ship I like. Down in the description you can get a link to this chapter. I know I read a little bit fast and can slur my words sometimes, so that might help you out to read along at points, or reread things that I didn't make clear. And also down in the description there is a link to Revolcram, the amazing author of this story. Go send her a bunch of praise and review the story for her. And one more thing, this chapter's a little bit longer, but I should hurry this up. If you have any other fan fictions you might want me to read, I try to stick in video game universes. But if you send me a link in the comments or through my personal message inbox at YouTube, I'll check it out and I'll read it, a few chapters of it. If I like it, I'll read it. So make sure to send me links. Yeah, okay, let's go. Tails gave a small whine of disappointment as the bell trilled through the entire school building, signaling the end of the current lesson and beginning of the next. Sonic grinned at his best friend's sigh as his favorite lesson finished. "You do realize," Sonic told him, as they gathered their books and headed for the door, "you're the only kid in the whole school that loves physics class." Tails shot a pitying glance at the hedgehog. "I'm sure I'm not," he replied, "and I don't care anyway. There's nothing wrong with liking physics." "Nope," Knuckles agreed, falling in step alongside his friends. He paused, as if in thought. "It does mean that you're a nerd, though." Sonic clenched his fist. "Shut it, Knux!" he growled through gritted teeth. Knuckles frowned awkwardly and shuffled away to catch up with Shadow, who was walking a few paces in front to avoid Sonic. "Thanks, Sonic," Tails whispered. His hand automatically reached out towards him, perhaps to take his hand. Sonic snatched his own away quickly, before Tails could take it by accident. The hedgehog stared wide-eyed at Tails, as the fox looked at the floor, his cheeks glowing in embarrassment. "We should get to class," Tails mumbled, hurrying towards the locker rooms to get changed into his t-shirt and shorts for games. As he walked into the room, the air humid with thick heat, Tails' heart began to pound in fear. He'd never really thought about it before, but what if he got a sudden urge to take a look at one of the other guys? Tails swallowed, pulling off his shirt and replacing it quickly. He was glad to see Sonic amble over to the other side of the room to get changed. He hurriedly swapped jeans for shorts and ran out of the room before he did something he may regret later. The fox began making his way towards the running track. Tails had never been good at running. He knew exactly how he could get to be good at it, but no matter how hard he tried, his legs always collapsed beneath him. His chest tightened and sweat drenched his entire body. And that was after barely 2 minutes. By the time the finish line bobbed into view, he could hardly gather his strength to drag himself across it. His clothes were always heavy with sweat, making him feel disgusting. But it didn't feel as bad as his chest, like he'd swallowed a brick hole. There was also this ripping agony, which forever tore itself through his sides. Tails groaned just thinking about it as Sonic caught up with him on the way to the track. "So, Tails, looking forward to racing today?" Tails groaned again, kicking at the ground. "I feel sick," he muttered. And it was true. He always got that horrible churning feeling in his stomach before running. Sonic tried to comfort him with a sympathetic smile, but Tails knew Sonic didn't understand at all. Sonic ran for fun. He could go forever, it seemed, without getting even the least bit out of breath. And his speed! He flashed by everyone else, traveling incredibly fast. Nobody could believe how fast he ran. Neither could they deny it. He was just one of those people who had an unexplainable talent. Most people respected him. Nearly all the girls loved him for it. But some were jealous. Namely, Shadow. He was convinced he was faster than Sonic, even though he'd never actually beaten him in a race before. As the entire class of boys herded out onto the racetrack, they'd all lined up on instruction from the coach. Tails swallowed hard. He always came last in every race and should have been used to it by now, but it was still a humiliating, staggering along way behind everyone else. All 10 boys crouched to the ground. At the sound of the whistle, 9 of them leapt into a sprint. Tails tried to, but ended up tripping and stumbling on his way into a slow jog. "Prower!" Coach bellowed at the fox, startling him. "Pick up the pace!" Tails clenched every muscle in his body and forced himself forwards. He worked his legs furiously, arms snapping back and forth. Lifting his head, Tails saw the blurred image of 9 boys ahead of him, all effortlessly running farther and farther away. Some already crossed the finish line. 7 seconds after the 9th racer finished, Tails lurched across the line, instantly collapsing onto the ground. He smothered his burning face in cool grass as he struggled to regain his breath, choking on the lack of air. Tails pulled himself into a sitting position and watched the other racers line up for the next race. Since they were competing, the person to come last would be disqualified from the rest of the races. The last two, who would always, as always, be Shadow and Sonic, would then run against each other to determine the overall winner, who would, as always, be Sonic. Tails didn't see the point. He didn't complain, though, because that meant he only had to run 1 race per lesson. A reward rather than punishment for coming last, it seemed to him. The current race ended and the second last comer dragged himself to the ground away from both the track and Tails. The fox watched him sit before switching around to sit cross-legged. He tugged at some grass as he watched the remaining racers dwindle down slowly. Sonic never lost first place. Keeping at a steady speed throughout every race, he wasn't even trying very hard. Tails' head cocked to the side slightly as he watched the blue hedgehog with interest. He made running look so easy, although that may have been because it was easy for him. Tails was mesmerized by the hypnotic swaying of Sonic's lean legs, his feet barely pounding the ground as he swept across the track, his arms pumped with strength, barely a bulge along both his arms. His legs were also quite slim, not half as muscly as most of the other boys, but twice as powerful. Tails breathed heavily as his concentration slipped to Sonic's chest. He'd never seen it before. Well, maybe when he's little. Yeah, he must have done. The two young boys were always sharing baths and running around in the hot summers in nothing but shorts, but he hadn't felt this way back then. Tails suddenly longed to turn back time and share one more bath with Sonic. Drawing his knees to his chest, Tails continued to stare at Sonic. He watched the hedgehog win yet another race, punching the air without a trace of modesty, grinning in triumph at his competitors. There was no sweat on his shirt, no heavy rising and falling of his chest as he struggled to gain his breath, no pain at all. How? How could he find running so easy, and how come he wasn't bulging with muscles? He did a lot of involuntary exercise out of school hours. Tails had never even seen him sit still. Didn't anything at all tire him out? Maybe. Tails gasped, dismissing the thought from his mind as he curled his tails around his front quickly. His cheeks by the time had returned to normal color as he cooled down, but now they burned scarlet once more. Tails? Sonic pulled his best friend to his feet. The lesson's over now. Come on. He looked suspiciously at the fox. What? He began, but decided to leave it as they headed back to the school building to get changed. Tails got changed quickly, throwing his bag over his shoulder when he was done. Turning around to head for the door, he suddenly noticed Sonic on the other side of the room, standing in nothing but shorts. With a gasp, Tails was overwhelmed with dizziness and fell towards the floor. The next thing he knew, he was being hauled up from the cold towels by Sonic, who was now, luckily, fully dressed. Sonic? Careful, buddy, you blacked out there for a few seconds. The blurred image of a crowd of jeering boys around him came into Tails' view. He felt embarrassed, but relieved that they didn't figure out why he had fainted in the first place. Tails couldn't believe that Sonic could actually cause him to pass out. He eased himself out of Sonic's grip. Sonic, I'm fine, honest. Sonic didn't look too sure, but he could see that Tails didn't want to talk about it. Not now, at least. Instead, he nodded as the fox collected all of his things up. Games was the last lesson of the day, so Sonic and Tails, along with an unwanted and still irritated Shadow, headed home. Tails walked between the two hedgehogs to prevent any sort of fight, although neither seemed to have any interest in each other at all. Sonic gave Tails a concerned glance of question, receiving a small smile in return. Eventually, Shadow turned swiftly around a corner and headed the other way without saying anything. Tails stepped closer to Sonic, a smile spreading across his face. Sonic looked down at him and they both giggled uneasily as their eyes met. So, Sonic said as they approached their houses. Whose house? Yours, Tails answered. He loved Sonic's house, though he wasn't sure why. He liked feeling welcoming into somewhere he didn't live. He didn't like it when Sonic came to his house because he didn't like feeling in charge or dominant. Drink? Sonic asked, opening up the fridge. Tails thanked him as he headed for a can of soda. He was handed a can of soda. The fox snapped open the can and took a few gulps, before lowering it and wiping his mouth. Tails gave a can to Sonic, who swigged a little and tossed the can into the bin. Then, without warning, he fell against Tails, pushing him backwards into the wall and kissed him. Tails, after quickly recovering from sudden surprise, wound his arms around Sonic's neck and willingly accepted the kiss. Sonic's hands began to wander, his right roaming through the fur on the back of Tails' head, his left tugging gently at the thick fur of his tails. Don't! Tails muttered, pulling away to push Sonic's hands off his tails. Why not? Sonic asked quietly, immediately grabbing hold of him. Because! He firmly dragged the hedgehog's hands off again. I don't like my stupid tails, and I'd rather forget they were there at all. Why don't you like them? They don't do anything. I like them if they let me fly or something. But they're your best feature, Sonic argued, brushing through the long fur with his fingers. Tails raised his eyebrows. So, you're in love with my tails, then? Not me? Oh, shut up, Sonic chuckled, laying his lips against Tails again, and again, and again. Eventually, Tails pulled again, breathless, his arms still wrapped tightly around the hedgehog's neck. They remained there for some time, Tails finding it hard not to melt on the spot as he gazed dreamily into Sonic's emerald-green eyes. Sonic gently brushed his hand through Tails' hair, sweeping across his velvety ears. So, are you going to tell me why you fainted earlier? Tails flushed red, shuffling his feet awkwardly. It was too hot? Sonic cocked his head to the side. Come on. But it's stupid. I won't laugh. Tails sighed. Okay, he mumbled unhappily, breaking his gaze with the hedgehog. It's because you were too hot. His voice trailed off as his cheeks flared, but Sonic didn't say anything, so Tails assumed that there was an invitation for him to continue. When you were getting changed, I was trying to not look at you by accident, but... You fainted because I was half-dressed? Sonic mumbled in disbelief. Well, it was fairly arousing. You mean that... Both boys froze as the click of a key in the door interrupted them. Sonic leapt towards the fridge, burying his face in the cold, pretending to search for food, while Tails stood warily and mumbled a hello to Sonic's mother as she entered the room. Damn it, why are there always parents around? Sonic thought angrily. There must be somewhere we can go to be alone. Hey, Mom, he said, emerging from the fridge empty-handed. He turned to his secret lover. Say, Tails, are your parents home? Not until 6, why? Sonic grabbed Tails' arm and pulled him out of the house, heading towards the next house over, pausing only to yell goodbye at his mother.